The World Bank told Nigeria last week to stick to its ongoing economic reforms, forecasting a rebound in about 10 or 15 years from now. But is Nigeria presently pursuing the right economic reform mix at the right pace and on the right path to sustainability? My guest on this is Dr. Paul Alaje, senior economist at SPM Professionals. Thank you very much for coming in with us tonight on the show.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Help me to make sense of Nigeria's economic problems as they are today manifested in various forms. Let's start from there.
Okay, so Nigeria economic problem started when we did not prepare for the rainy season. In 2015, when we started seeing major reduction in the price of global crude oil. And I'm talking of recent challenge. I'm not talking of, we have had some challenges like institutional concerns and all those with us. But I'm only narrowing down because of the time of interview to the recent one. Now, we had some of those challenges, and the gains we made when we had economic prosperity were not particularly put into other use. What we have seen, rather, was that we've looked for a quick fix, which include printing an amount worth $50 billion. I tell you, if you print $50 billion in any developing country that is import dependent, such economy will come on its knees. That is perhaps why we have high inflation today at about 33, near 33%. Bureau of Statistics said it's still 32.7%. And when you look at unemployment figure 1 hour a week, it's higher than what is expected at 1 to 2%, but unemployment is saying 5.2%. GDP growth rate, World Bank says it has seen a modest GDP growth rate. But we have to be very careful in quoting that as positive. Because when you use Naira terms, you see GDP has grown by 3%. But when you see dollar terms, you see that Nigerian GDP has indeed sunk, as it has went from over $400 billion to now around $250 billion. And how will you compare Nigeria? Will you compare Nigeria with Sokoto State or with Lagos State? You will compare Nigeria with the rest of the world. And at that time, you will use one of the major currencies around the world. It could be dollar, it could be euro, it could be pounds. But when you use any of those currencies, you see that our GDP is far worse off than where we were. When you compare us in terms of positioning, where were we as a major growth region or country in Africa? In the entire Africa, we were number one. Today, according to IMF, we are no longer number one. We are not number two. We are now number 4. That's not my figure. That's according to IMF. When you look at exchange rate, what used to be 100 and what used to be 400, 800, there is need for convergence of exchange rate. I agree completely. But should we say because we need to converge, exchange rate went from 450, 750, that was the guy, about 300, now to 1,600, 1,650, we are having 50 Naira gap. But at what cost is this policy coming? And that is why when we make policy, we need to check. There have been arguments upon arguments, even among economic professionals, as to whether we should adopt this method to achieve the same result or the other method to achieve the same result. What is it? What does it mean on the street? It means high cost of transport to many, as subsidy has been removed in a regime of flotation. It means on tables of people, meat and food are disappearing. Yes.
Paul, we're going to get a bit of that. And at first, the opening sequence of your comment was that we failed to plan as a country 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So, technically speaking, this is what you call, described as the wages of sin, in a manner of speaking, if I can put it that way. So, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Unfortunately,
yeah, please go ahead.
Economic sins, you have to pay for them.
Yeah, we're paying for it right now.
Unfortunately, you have to pay for your economic sins.
We're paying for it. So this is, technically speaking, yes. That was what President Tinubu inherited just about a year ago and a few months. So read the tea leaves of his economic reforms to date and the latest World Bank outlook on those reforms for me. And you're just touching on subsidy removal, exchange rate convergence and all of that. So that's one point. What do you make of the portfolio of his economic reforms so far?
Well, President Tinubu's method of solving some of these humongous economic challenges was to float the naira, something I have serious concern about. Why? Because I've studied 12 other countries who tried to adopt the same method. Unfortunately, they never worked. I give you an instance. Russia, before 1999, the president of Russia that was in office found it difficult to return. Why? Because of flotation, removal of subsidy, and increase in taxes. It appears these are three strategies we're adopting in Nigeria. It made life of average Russian to be tougher. It made economic projection for the country to be poorer. I mentioned Germany in 1945, after the war, also adopted flotation policy, removal of some subsidy that were given to homes, and it makes life tougher. In fact, Germany had a horrible experience to the point that the currency got devalued, that it was abandoned, and they started a new currency called Deutschmark. Please, you can read, people can go online and read about these things. Japan haven't had their fair share of economic concern after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Also understood that they need to peg their currency. And of course, they peg their currency. I need to say this. Nigeria will not be the only country producing that is giving subsidy. Most countries in the Middle East, in fact, are giving subsidy. A number of arguments will be, oh, but they don't smuggle crude. Smuggling PMS from Nigeria to neighboring country should not result in removal of subsidy. That argument is defective. The reason is because if you say you remove subsidy, has that stopped the smuggling? It is to strengthen our security system such that if you are selling PMS in Nigeria, you will find it very difficult to take it to another country. Look at Qatar. Will you easily smuggle PMS from Qatar to Dubai?
Dr. Paul, would you say subsidy for petrol consumption for ordinary Nigerians, or you rather want a pricing system that allows for the market to work, in which, based on the price of the dollar, exchange rate, and oil prices, crude oil prices could modulate on a monthly basis, as it were, rather than an outright subsidy? Or would you want a combination of both?
I need to say this to you. No, I need to say this to you. Three things are possible. First, the model that is happening in the Middle East, provide subsidy in the same PMS and other market that we are talking about by the government, and peg the currency. You live like kings. And you can fact-check these conversations. Two, let your currency be stable, then remove subsidy. That has been my argument over the years for Nigeria. You cannot float your currency that is susceptible to devaluation, then remove subsidy. It is one direction. The price of PMS will always go up. Eventually, at what time will Nigeria get subsidy? Will Nigeria be stable? And remember, for macroeconomic variable, when it comes to what we are checking in price, is stability and exchange rate. I doubt if we ever get this thing. I know what bank is saying 15 years. I laughed when I heard that, because Christine Lagarde, IMF boss, came to Nigeria in 2016 and said Nigeria economy was robust, it will never go into a recession. I warned very carefully that if government listens and takes that advice, it will be worse. Not only did we go into a recession, we stayed in recession for more than a quarter. Why? Because when people read our economy without understanding the nature of the economy that we run, they will make textbook, boardroom policy for us. But when the hunger comes, when the poverty comes, when concerns come, it will be real, and we can read it on the faces of our people. So for me, I would want to focus on what the solution should be. But to assume that just staying in the policy that we have devalued naira-based growth make our economy to be better, I doubt if World Bank have carefully studied it. And that is why I think World Bank should have a second look at the comment that was made and the report that was presented. I agree with a few things in that report, that we need to cut our costs, that we need to support the vulnerable. I support and I agree completely with the report of the World Bank. When you say that we have to maintain 15 years, I tell you, countries have stayed perpetually on this. Argentina have done more than 20 years. Well, please, sir, Argentina has stayed more than 20 years. The peso, the currency peso in Argentina, a Southern American country, never saw a major push. In fact, check inflation in Argentina, check poverty in Argentina. You wonder what has a South America country with this. Now, for me, I think we need to look beyond some of these conversations and look at what is real, what is possible for our people within the context of economics, and not use one directional approach to solving our problem as a nation.
But again, if you look at the portfolio of reforms, present reforms that the World Bank says, look, Nigeria should stay the course. You've got the reforms around the FX market, of course, the petrol very highly inflammable, and that's everyone's getting that. Then, of course, you've got around the tax reforms that Taiwo Udile and the rest of his team are doing. We have reforms in a few other areas of the economy. So if you try to pick and choose, in a manner of speaking, where do you think we should stay? In what areas do you think the current administration should stay the course, and a few areas that you think perhaps we need to go back to the drawing board as quickly as possible and take a second look at what we're doing and where we're headed?
First of all, peg the currency. Currency affects everything. No matter what you generate as a country, it will come back to hurt you. Listen, before we say subsidies go and we floated the naira, our concern was that we are spending 3.3 trillion naira for subsidy. This half year alone, authority revealed that we have spent 6 trillion naira, almost times 2 of that money, to service debts. Why? Because we devalue. It will appear to us as we make more money, but in the real sense, when you convert it to the dollar and benchmark it against what we did last year, it might even be smaller. National Bureau of Statistics say our export is more, our import is more, but when you convert it to the dollar rate, you see that we are doing worse than what we did last year. Therefore, for us to have a real economy, to impact our people positively and in real terms, we need to peg this currency. And I'm not the only one saying this. Lagos Chamber of Commerce, in their recent report or release, revealed that it's important for manufacturers not to be stifled, and business people, especially as it affects their chambers, for authorities to consider pegging the naira to 1,000 to the dollar. The question you may ask me is, where are we going to get the money? And so for me, of the three, that is what we need to review. Very, very, very important, because it will be beneficial to the government, it will be beneficial to firms, that's businesses, factories, manufacturers, everybody, and household, most importantly, beneficial to all. So, but I don't know if you want me to say where will the money come from. Nigeria is supposed to do 2.1 to 2.4 million barrels of crude. What are we doing? 2, there are other oil fields that we have abandoned, you know, that should have come to the stream and been added. In terms of investment, how do we encourage investment in crude? A number of persons, I know IMF is saying we should look at non-crude oil, but that will take time. I'm looking at our low-hanging fruit so that our currency, which for me is the most important thing, can be stable today. We know we need to divest. Again, government need to do something very quickly. In Nigeria today, it's more difficult to export than to import. I know that Export Promotion Council is doing a lot to support that. But the reality is, by taps of few buttons on your phone, you can import on some websites in China into your homes. But how will it be so difficult for you to export? Again, what is that thing we want to export? For me, the solution is productivity, manufacturing, production. That is what we are running away from. And that is what we must do, honestly. Because I've not seen any country, including Indonesia, that have adopted a policy without going back to realize that if we don't do some of these things, it's really going to be painful at the end of the tunnel. We have heard that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Just hope that at that time, the power grid will not be blown, will not be damaged. Because if it does, then there will even be no light at the end of the tunnel.
What you're saying is that, look, we need light right in the middle of the tunnel where we are, not at the end of the tunnel. We need light right in the middle of the tunnel, so at least we can see where we're going.
The path of trek is too much.
I understand. And that's what the FDB president says. You can't industrialize. You can't grow in the dark. You've got to have light. So let there be light. So in a manner of speaking, do you think we have the right mix of economic reforms? And just to sum up our conversation tonight, I know it's a very lengthy conversation. It's quite robust. It's the depth and breadth of it. Do you think we have the right mix of reforms? Do you think we're moving at the right speed of execution? And do you think we're on the right course? Summarize for me.
For me, I think we are committing own goals. One hand, we want to grow. The second hand is showing that we are losing it in terms of real growth. 2, it as though we are making more money at FAC, but for FAC to disburse this money, I'm talking of subnationals, to disburse this money, the evidence is disappearing in most of the states, apart from 4. FCT and Lagos are exception. So what happens to the remaining states, and apart from Lagos and Federal Capital Territory, we find it challenging to see this evidently in the life of the state. So where are the money? Because contractors that will build road will also increase their money. Labor that they will pay will also increase their money. Cost of power increase. Just today, I heard an interview of one of the persons within the power sector. You know, we have generation, we have distribution. In between the two, we have transmission. I think it's the MD Transmission Company. When they ask, why is it expensive? Why is cost of power expensive? He said, don't you see what exchange rate is? So you say exchange rate is a factor even in the conversation. So no matter what we are doing, I think the Mr. President and his team, central bank governor, we need to have a rethink and a look at the exchange rate factor. For me, it will be better for all of us as a nation if we reconsider it and know that we cannot let this loose permanently or forever, hoping that one day, you see, in economics, we have a common saying. We borrowed it from the father of modern macroeconomics called John Maynard Keynes. What he said is that in the long run, we are all dead. We don't know when that 15 years will be. We don't know if crude oil prices will drop. We don't know if we even be able to export. We don't know which country will fight another country. 15 years is such a long time for us to sustain this policy. For me, which I've advised, this could be done in phases, but most importantly, we need to boost our reserve. We need to export more. We need to encourage more investment in both oil and non-oil sector so that we can have that major growth and protect the naira all across the world. Not less than 50 countries are protecting their currency. Why can't we do the same?
No, we're not all dead. We're all here. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul Alaje, Senior Economist at SPM Professionals and Public Policy Analyst. Thank you so much, as always, for your insight.